Thank you very much, Ms. Bryant. Your Excellencies, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Turkey, His Excellency Ambassador Ahmet Yildiz, Assistant Secretary General and UNDP Assistant Administrator Cihan Sultanoglu, Director of the UNDP Independent Evaluation Office, Indran Naidu, President of the European Evaluation Society, Rita Oksanen, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's really a pleasure to see such a full room on a key issue like evaluation this early in the morning. I'd like to thank the organizers of this very important meeting, the 5th Global National Evaluation Capacities Conference, for inviting me to share my perspectives, and especially to thank the government of the Republic of Turkey for so generously hosting us here today. It is indeed my pleasure to be here and to contribute to discussions addressing the theme People, Planet, and Progress for the SDG era. The program for this week raises pertinent questions for the way forward in evaluation for sustainable development that need to be considered not only by the evaluation community, but also by society at large. I'm sure that this dialogue among the more than 500 global and national experts and practitioners will make clear the additional steps that will be required to evaluate our progress towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, and highlight any course corrections that may be required along the way. I hope that my observations this morning will provide insights for your discussions during the course of this week on how the evaluation community can build on the progress it has made so far to accelerate action for achievement of the SDGs, particularly in relation to measurement and evaluation approaches, strengthening national systems and capacities, improving data collection and analysis, including local level and better disaggregated data, expanding and deepening partnerships and stakeholder engagement for achievement of the goals, and as well ensuring funding for evaluation activities that are core to making the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development a reality. My address this morning will speak to 5 key dimensions. First, the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, the complexities and challenges the SDGs present as an interrelated agenda, the core principle of leaving no one behind that has been mentioned so far this morning, and the data implications and requirements of this central principle, the importance of strengthening national capacities and strategic partnerships, and 5th and finally, the collective national, regional, and international responsibilities we will need to forge and to strengthen to hold us to our global course. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with the first key dimension and contextualize the transition from the era of the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals. As we're all aware, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are not merely a doubling of the number of goals that the global community seeks to undertake, nor is it just about increasing the total number of targets and indicators by which we seek to benchmark ourselves. The SDGs constitute a paradigm shift. Unlike the Millennium Development Goals that applied only to developing countries, the SDGs apply universally to all United Nations member states, North and South alike, at all stages of development. The global community in September 2015 pledged to carry on the work and complete the unfinished business of the Millennium Development Goals, and to build on it in a call to action for peace, prosperity, people, planet, and partnership to create this future that we want. At its core, the SDGs are integrated and indivisible and balance the 3 dimensions of sustainable development: the economic, social, and environmental. While the SDGs maintain the thematic work on poverty eradication targeted by the MDGs, they reflect a comprehensive perspective on international development and sustaining human life on this planet. By providing a set of integrated targets and progress indicators, the Sustainable Development Goals are the key to the success of the 2030 Agenda and will guide the development agendas and national policies of UN member states and their international cooperation over the remaining 13 years. In reflecting the fragile state of our planet and the impact on societies, the SDGs are linked to the need for the global community to adopt and implement integrated policies and plans towards inclusion, resource efficiency, mitigation and adaptation to climate change, resilience to disasters, both natural and man-made, and to develop and implement, in line with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, holistic disaster risk management at all levels. The SDG framework also includes goals on climate change and sustainable energy for all. And together with the Paris Agreement under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, recognized that climate change represents an urgent and potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet, and thus requires the widest possible cooperation by all countries and requires an ambitious international response. The 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals are underpinned by the Addis Ababa Action Agenda of the Third International Conference on Financing for Development, which establishes a strong foundation to support its implementation. It will take trillions of dollars to implement and monitor the 2030 Agenda. And the Addis Ababa Action Agenda provides a new global framework for financing sustainable development by aligning all financing flows and policies with economic, social, and environmental priorities. It includes a comprehensive set of policy actions with over 100 concrete measures that draw upon all sources of finance, domestic and international, public and private, and also draws on technology, innovation, trade, debt, and data in order to support achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this regard, Honorable Minister, we are grateful to the government of Turkey for its generous contribution to host the Technology Bank here in Istanbul, as access to appropriate technologies will be key to achieving the SDGs. This is one of the first SDG targets to be met. Another significant difference between the MDGs and the SDGs is how they have been created. The Sustainable Development Goals emerged from an unparalleled participatory policy process, and this is reflected in their scale and their ambition. In addition to UN member states, business, civil society, academia, and millions of ordinary citizens contributed to crafting the goals. This inclusive and participatory process resulted in the comprehensive, far-reaching, and people-centered set of universal and transformative goals and targets, perhaps the global community's single largest development agenda, roadmap, and hope for a more equitable, inclusive, resilient, peaceful, and sustainable planet. Ownership is broad-based and strengthens the demand for accountability for results. This is the context to which the national evaluation practice and capacities must respond. This brings me to my second key dimension, the integrated nature of the agenda. What we have set out to undertake is a bold and transformative journey, but it also presents to us a whole new and complex challenge that calls on us to begin to design, implement, monitor, and evaluate development from a different playbook. A key starting point is acknowledging the interdependent, interconnected nature of our world and of the relationships among the various stakeholders acting within it, and how this has direct and indirect impact on political, institutional, social, economic, and environmental outcomes. At the recent High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, 43 countries, including 11 developed and 32 developing countries, voluntarily submitted their national reviews. And we thank Turkey for submitting its review in the preceding cycle. Through these voluntary national reviews and the statements during the general debate of the 72nd UN General Assembly, it is clear that the 2030 Agenda demands the move away from business as usual. The SDGs require governments to go beyond traditional development programs to tackle the complexity of the 2030 Agenda through much more integrated approaches. To deal with the multidimensionality of the challenges, some countries are pursuing outcome-based approaches, grappling with the interlinkages across goals and the related synergies and trade-offs as they try to find their own pathways to achieve the goals and to mobilize the necessary financing to achieve them. With budgets of government ministries allocated and measured on their contribution to overarching national outcomes and not confined to narrow ministerial portfolios, attempts are being put into place in some countries to take a whole of government approach towards achievement and measuring of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they will also have to adjust their evaluation approaches in order to deal with this. We're pleased to take note of the emerging interest of supreme audit institutions to also play a critical role in assessing the development impact of the SDGs and the return on the investments through the budgetary allocations. Supreme audit institutions are beginning to focus on assessing the readiness of national systems to report on progress towards the achievement of the SDGs, and subsequently to audit their operations and the reliability of the data they produce. They're also looking at performance audits that examine the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of key government programs that contribute to specific aspects of the SDGs, and assessing and supporting as appropriate the implementation of Goal 16, which relates in part to transparent, efficient, and accountable institutions crucial to achievement of the goals. This process of implementation, monitoring and evaluation and performance audits is not only forcing us to comprehend the complexity of the development agenda, but also has placed much needed priority attention on addressing the root causes of the development challenges countries are facing. Deepening the learning, stepping up the pace of implementation, building capacities for managing complexity, for futures thinking, and for integrated analysis and program development, aligning budget processes, leveraging innovation technology and public and private finance, and strengthening national monitoring and evaluation capacities are essential for achieving this ambitious agenda. These new approaches are welcomed. They also raise the question of how will this impact evaluation methodologies and approaches that are currently in place in many countries. Our current evaluation methodologies, mechanisms, and institutional arrangements fit for purpose to be able to evaluate the interrelated nature of this development agenda. I'm very pleased to note through the plenary and individual sessions at the conference we'll have a dialogue on how the agenda of eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions, combating inequality within and among countries, preserving the planet, creating sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, and fostering social inclusion are linked to each other and are interdependent. Your expert insights on these interlinkages and the interdependencies and its practical implications for the evaluation systems and for evaluation practice and enhancement of national evaluation capacities will help to move this agenda forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the third dimension I'd like to highlight is the core principle of leaving no one behind and the implications for the data requirements and the partnerships that will be required to make this a lived principle. To achieve the aspirations of the SDGs, nothing short of a global data revolution must take place, and we must move this from buzzwords to reality as soon as possible. Without high-quality data, providing the right information on the right things at the right time, designing, monitoring, and evaluating effective policies is almost impossible. We will need to strengthen the data systems, including through leveraging technology, and disaggregate data to address the challenge of invisibility, that is the gap in what we know, and also the challenge of inequality, the gap between the haves and the have-nots along multiple dimensions and not just income. This is imperative if we are to leave no one behind. A gender lens and rights-based approaches are essential ingredients also of this inclusive approach. Gender equality is both a goal in itself and a key enabler of all other goals if we are to unleash the full potential of our human community. The systematic mainstreaming of agenda perspective in the implementation of the whole 2030 agenda is crucial. To make this breakthrough, we will have to go to the root of our social, economic, and political constructs and invest in tearing down the constraints to empowerment, participation, and progress. If we're unable to do so, the measures of our achievements are neither sustainable nor resilient to withstand political, social, economic, and environmental shocks. The data revolution will be the essential linchpin to ensure programs and interventions are targeting the poor and the most vulnerable and marginalized communities, and that we're able to measure and monitor progress and evaluate the effectiveness of outcomes. The emphasis on real-time and credible data and on their analysis and use in policy planning and programmatic responses and services delivery cannot be overstated. We have seen large volumes of data collected at huge costs remain unutilized as they were either not released for public consumption, made available months or even years later, not well documented and harmonized, or not available at the level of detail required for decision-making and evaluation. As we're all acutely aware, we are what we measure. Individuals who are not visible on official data will continue to remain unrepresented and their needs neglected. Their lack of progress will remain unreported, and living in the shadows will perpetuate the denial of basic rights and exclusion from the benefits of prosperity and growth. This will undermine the overarching ambitions of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. We also will need to build a new social consensus on data use, underpinned by effective regulation to protect people's rights. We need to put in place the reassurances that the new world of data will indeed be used to benefit and not to harm people. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth dimension I'd like to highlight this morning is strengthening national capacities and establishing strategic partnerships. It is critical that the global data revolution is accompanied by proactive strengthening of the capacities of the national statistical institutions. This must be prioritized and funded adequately. In the same vein, we need to be able to harness information into comparable analysis from all stakeholders, academia and the scientific community, the private sector, and civil society organizations. We will need to develop new approaches and methodologies, essentially a new paradigm of national data partnerships and ecosystems. We need stakeholders to be active users of data in real time and able to contribute to the analysis of the state of play. We also need to ensure that stakeholders have access to platforms to engage and provide feedback to shape policies and development action, and for course correction if required. These platforms contribute as an important source of information for the evaluation of the development effectiveness of interventions for achieving national development objectives, including the Sustainable Development Goals. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that there are significant and growing inequalities in access to data and information and in the ability to use it. We must ensure that information is made available and open, and that we do not widen or create new information divides. Data literacy is key. We're encouraged by the actions and efforts of member states to begin to establish and rationalize the data ecosystem at all levels of society, to integrate different but comparable data sources, explore citizen-generated data to supplement national statistics, take longitudinal and multidimensional approaches, link evidence-based policy planning to financing of the SDGs, and to integrate data from the private sector, academia, and civil society as a source for some SDGs, particularly where indicators are not available from existing data collection systems. These are all encouraging developments. The fifth and final dimension I'd like to highlight this morning is national, regional, and international collective responsibilities. With such a strong demand and high expectations to ensure the national evaluation capacities can undertake the necessary analysis of the vast amount of data linked to assessments, reviews, and course corrections. We will have to acknowledge that current constraints continue to be a challenge for many member states. The international development community is also increasingly linking development aid to performance measures of outcomes and development results, which changes the development dynamics and expectations. Within this frame, we need to work together and more intensively as a community to identify the needed resources, support, capacity requirements, and possible collaborative arrangements with international development partners to develop tools and skills that can facilitate data availability and access and strengthened use for SDG monitoring and evaluation. Alongside the United Nations General Assembly endorsed Cape Town Global Action Plan on Sustainable Development Data, the Global Indicator Framework for SDGs and Targets adopted by the UN General Assembly just a few months ago in June, and the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development are welcome critical initiatives, and we need to do much more. The role of the UN system to fully leverage the assets, resources, networks, and capacities of the global, regional, and national community to address this agenda is vital. The UN system has an important role alongside other partners to continue to support member states to enable the engagement and acceptance of data from a wider spectrum of actors and stakeholders, and to harness new technologies and big data for effective policy planning and development response. The United Nations Secretary General's report to the member states in June on repositioning the UN development system to deliver the 2030 Agenda to ensure a better future for all underlines this point clearly. The Secretary General, recognizing that the 2030 Agenda was designed to be comprehensive and integrated, has impressed upon the UN development entities the urgency to work closely together in a much more coordinated fashion and to pool expertise to deliver better for countries. The United Nations will need a new and more integrated approach to capacity building of national institutions, private and public, especially for SDG planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. The Secretary General is undertaking a comprehensive reform of the UN development system to ensure the United Nations is fit for the task to support countries to achieve the 2030 Agenda, including the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Commitments on climate change. Within this global collaborative framework, the international community, including the United Nations, needs to be able to support governments to make the right investments and take the right decisions to seize the promise of peace, prosperity, and a healthy planet for all people. More funding and better partnerships between public and private sectors are essential. The academic and scientific community are also key partners to develop new data sets and model development scenarios that will enable us to keep track of the socioeconomic and environmental trends and to enable course corrections. Science, technology, and innovation must be used to accelerate progress, to close inequality gaps along all dimensions, for example, in health and education, to ensure food security, make the energy transition, and shift to more sustainable consumption and production patterns, and provide new opportunities for growth and jobs. And as we progress, we must find new means to provide voice and visibility and durable solutions for the communities that are furthest behind, the most vulnerable, and improve transparency and accountability of all stakeholders. The cost of not doing this, as the Honourable Minister said earlier, is high. Persistent horizontal inequalities, social and economic exclusion, lack of societal cohesion, and weak institutions threaten peaceful societies. The evaluation community is key in keeping countries on track to make the promise of this most far-reaching global development agenda a reality. In conclusion, let me end by saying that I'm hopeful that we can get to this future we want. Since the world came together in September 2015 to adopt this truly remarkable framework for common progress, we have seen a transformative movement taking shape globally. The SDGs have moved from the United Nations General Assembly Hall to countries and cities across the world. The 2030 Agenda is now being implemented by multiple stakeholders at the global, regional, national, city, and community levels in developed and developing countries alike, reflecting its universality in ownership and scope. We saw evidence of this movement forward during the high-level political forum last year and in July this year. We have been encouraged that in many countries of all levels of development, heads of state and governments are personally leading the charge. Governments are incorporating the Sustainable Development Goals into national plans and visions. In some cases, they're also incorporating Sustainable Development Principles into legislative frameworks. Parliamentary debates are taking place on how the government's plans and budgets will ensure that no one is left behind. Strong leadership is also coming from state and city levels. In this respect, it is encouraging to see mayors and representatives of local government actively being engaged and contributing to supporting the localization of the Sustainable Development Goals. In the end, it is a people's agenda. Multi-stakeholder dialogues are taking place among state and municipal governments to adapt the goals to the specific contexts and development needs of communities and adjust budget prioritization and allocations as required. At the same time, business, academia, and civil society are taking their own actions. Businesses, primarily big business, are increasingly investing in sustainability and aligning their business approaches. Small and medium enterprises are also slowly coming on board, and we must encourage and support SMEs to step up their engagement as they play a major role in most economies. Small and medium enterprises contribute up to 60% of total employment and up to 40% of national income in emerging economies, according to World Bank data. They also account for over 95% of firms and 60 to 70% of employment and generate a large share of new jobs in OECD economies. It is crucial that the business models and the approaches and the investments of these small and medium enterprises are also aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. Our universities and schools are enhancing curricula to reflect the Sustainable Development Goals, and civil society are orienting their services delivery towards achievement of specific goals and targets, and are increasingly doing so with the support of and in partnership with governments. We look to new and groundbreaking approaches from the evaluation community so that these actions can be sustained and countries can stay on course. Agenda 2030 calls on us to take bold and transformative approaches, anchored in universal norms and values, with people and planet at the center of our concerns. I am certain that this conference will lay an excellent ground for us to build new partnerships, knowledge platforms, innovative solutions, evaluation approaches, and to design new ways to strengthen national capacities for us to achieve our global ambition, an inclusive, equitable, prosperous, and sustainable world. Thank you all very much. Good morning.